in the memorial service that was held on the 24th of the 2nd at his 200-acre ranch in Highway 73, and that's where he remained. Obviously, a massive, big deal. Andre the Giant. I've used to talk about him a lot in the our old podcast, the Wrestling Skull podcast, but he was a huge attraction to the business. He'd been around WWF, but he'd been in a lot of pain and all the rest of it at that point. Kind of like it's kind of one of those sad things, Matt, where I guess the what we know now about the whole giantism and all the rest of it, like when you hear the Big Show and what can be done now to help him and kind of feel more comfortable by getting by in life. I guess it was just not available at that time for poor old Andre around the time when he was really suffering towards the end.
No, yeah, that's a real tragedy, really, because that guy, throughout his wrestling career, he'd been through a hell of a lot, and it's kind of sad sometimes when you think people look back. And I mean, I was guilty of this myself when I looked back on his wrestling career, and I was more familiar with his later WWF stuff. That I didn't really think his skill set was all that, but it was because, like you said, he was in so much pain, and it was difficult for him at the time. But on his earlier stuff, he's almost like a completely different giant, really.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. Okay, now Lex Luger, what's interesting here is he's working in WWF and USWA as well at the time, which is kind of somewhat owned by the WWF anyway, but Luger's appearing there more than he is on the WWF house shows. So as far as his wrestling's going at this time, is pretty much for those guys at the USWA. He is promoting the match with him and Perfect that he's about to have. Note here, Luger was on TV studio in Memphis. That morning he didn't work the Monday night show after all, since he had to be on Long Beach for the WWF tapings. Luger was neither a heel nor a face on TV, although Brian Christopher, of course, I'm sure we'll remember him, Matt, as a name to remember, who would eventually become Grandmaster Sexay, introduced himself as the new friend to Lex Luger on this particular episode that he appeared on, and of course then they kind of bigged up the whole Bobby Heenan relationship, and of course going into his match against Mr. Perfect. At the Superstars taping, and this is at the back end of February '93, Mr. Perfect and Lex Luger had a verbal confrontation during an interview at a taping. This kind of signifies their kind of feud. I think what's really fascinating to look at this match so far is that I could not find any Luger worked no house shows, didn't do any touring with the company. He was kind of very much kept away from the guys in the roster, and I don't know if there was resentment in that, but it was kind of like, I don't know if that was McMahon kind of trying to do that on purpose. Like, he's been known to do that sometimes to want to have that kind of vibe going on. But he was certainly, he was certainly sort of well protected, shall we say, around this time with the company. Early at March now, and obviously we will be talking about Hulk Hogan quite a bit in this Lex Luger episode, because really this is kind of what happens, and he's kind of like the main reason this ripple effect happens on Lex Luger. So Hogan returned at Monday Night Raw, doing both a live interview and a taped interview, where he basically blamed tabloid media about going on at him and saying that he wasn't going to come back to wrestling, and here he is, and everyone's going to be as happy that Hogan's back. Then we also have some news here that Jerry Lawler faced Lex Luger once again, and again this is at the USWA. This was in Nashville. Lawler winning via DQ when Brian Christopher interfered and double crossed. There was a rematch between these two This was a time where Jeff Jarrett was down there as well, and I believe Randy Savage was working matches there as well. So there was quite a busy time down there for those guys. But Luger is at this point effectively working for USWA more than he is the WWF. Okay, March now. This is the second week of March. Lots of news regarding some of the biggest names in both today's wrestling business and the modern era. Both Hulk Hogan and Ric Flair have returned to the WWF and WCW within the past weeks, which is very interesting. Like, you've got two of the biggest names in professional wrestling, and they're both coming back for returns, in the same week, which is kind of a bit odd, but I guess they're trying to big themselves up. But obviously, very much established. Hogan is the WWF guy. Ric Flair is the total WCW guy. I think that's what we're trying to get with there. So yeah, he's back on Raw the 22nd of the 2nd. That's when Hogan first comes back, and of course he's doing the whole thing with Beefcake. They're going to be teaming up to face Ted DiBiase and IRS at WrestleMania that year. Not so much good news at this time for WWF. They are hit with 2 lawsuits going on for WWF, which, of course, one of them is the whole steroid thing. I mean, there's big problems going on there. Some of the guys are coming forward about it. And also there's one from, of course, Jim Hellwig, of course, the Ultimate Warrior, who filed a $5.8 million lawsuit against Titan Sports Inc. and the World Wrestling Federation, and Vince and Linda McMahon. The 19-page suit was filed about 2 weeks ago in the US District Court, and basically the main claims allegations involved that Hellwig claims to have created the name and image of the Dingo Warrior. Now, I'm sure you remember that one, while in Texas, which included the unique pattern of face paint and brightly coloured strings wrapped around his biceps. Obviously, we all kind of know that thing. He would end up even changing his name, thinking that would legally mean he could go on and kind of get... I guess what he was trying to do here, he was trying to get a stake a claim for his merchandise and say that he was the only guy that could actually be that character at that time. And so not good news for WWF outside of the ring at this point. So lots of stuff going on with that, and it kind of feels like at this time when I was doing the research here that I think Vince McMahon is very much preoccupied with things that are going on in and around the WWF at this point. And I definitely think that's worth pointing out. I want to jump now to the 7th of the 3rd, and there's a whole new... There's a Fox special here, which is interesting because they're kind of reporting about the upcoming WrestleMania. And this is one of the first times the Fox Live special have ever actually done it for a WrestleMania, and they focus quite a lot with Lex Luger here, and they put him on the show and all the rest of it. So he's getting a bit of top billing here. There's no doubt about that. He's doing what he needs to do. Now, how about this then? We go here to, of course, another one here, which now the 29th of March, Matt, WWF have a house show, and at the top of the card is Bret Hart versus Lex Luger, and Bret Hart beats Lex Luger, albeit by count out, but nonetheless those two have had that clash there already. And also it's worth noting around this time, the latest news on Jim Ross's arrival is that nothing has changed since the last week. Ross has yet to get a release from WCW at this point. Of course, we know, Matt, Jim Ross would debut at WrestleMania 9. It was quite a big deal at the time, getting him over around that point. Matt, I want to now hit WrestleMania 9. This show, Matt, for like I said before, it's not really well known for its magnificent wrestling. I don't think we'll remember it for that. But the one thing that does stand out, I've always thought stands out, is the whole layout and the look of it is very unique, isn't it?
Yeah, I mean, for me, it stands out in that way. It's the most gimmicky WrestleMania, I think, that I've ever seen.
Yeah.
Even to the point where, like, all the commentators are dressed up in robes, and just what the hell is Macho Man wearing?
Yeah. Yeah, they've got them dressed up as robes. I mean, Jim Ross, like, he must have thought, what the hell have I come to here? You know, you got to do this. There's camels, there's animals. I mean, there's like real life things going on here. And like you say, Matt, it is gimmick taken to a whole new level. It looks like they've really tried to go all out on this whole Caesars theme, and trying to bring that into this. Okay, let's get some facts on this WrestleMania as well. Just going into this. And this is, as of the Monday leading into WrestleMania, the live WrestleMania show from Sunday's Caesars Palace in Las Vegas, about 13,000 tickets were sold with almost no freebies whatsoever. It should be an easy sellout, reports Meltzer, although probably not a sellout far in advance. As much as they'd like. The remaining tickets as of Monday were the most expensive, with the tickets left only in the $100 to $150 price tag. WWF was confident enough to sell out to announce on the Monday that the show would be available within Las Vegas on pay-per-view. So it's interesting. One thing I think that's worth pointing out here is they are in Vegas, Matt, and one thing I was reading up on here is that because they knew that there were a lot of people coming to Vegas to do the gambling and all the rest of it, like they really thought, oh, you know what, we'll get these tickets sold easy, no problems, because there's going to be high rollers in there. They're just going to come along. And what happened, believe it or not, Matt, is there's about especially if you look on that front row, you will see fans. Or not, that are not fans. I mean, they're there in the crowd, but they're not fans. And what happened was a lot of the high rollers that come in that weekend were given comps, and one of the comps was like some of the best seats at WrestleMania as kind of a freebie. So it was like, okay, you're with us. You've paid to stay in our hotel at Caesars Palace. We're throwing you in this. So you'll see a lot of people there that are not kind of reacting in the normal way that perhaps wrestling fans would have. But that's, of course, I guess, good business in a sense that they were able to sell those tickets to Caesars Palace, and Caesars Palace were just going to give them out to their high rollers that weekend in all that. Now, getting into the match itself on this one, Matt, obviously, as we talk about it, going into this, what was your take on Lex Luger and Mr. Perfect that went on? It went on at number 6. What was your take on the match after revisiting?
Yeah, well, I guess it was his first real big feud, I mean, he came in and straight away was asking for this match, from what I remember. Mm-hmm. So coming in here and actually getting this, and I mean, what better person could you hope to work with at a WrestleMania? Mr. Perfect, you can't really get a better opponent than that, and you're going to have a good match. Mm-hmm. I don't think Mr. Perfect is really that capable of having a bad match. Mm-hmm. So great decision there to make that a good lasting memory for Lex Luger on his first WrestleMania. So I think I did enjoy it. I thought it was really good. In the end, I mean, although it wasn't what we were hoping for, I think it definitely did a good job of not really damaging Mr. Perfect, but also making Lex Luger look really strong in the end, and especially when he hits him with that elbow. I think, did they say at this point he had something like 20 TKO victories or something coming into this? As much as that, yeah. So that was pretty impressive. That's some impressive booking. You don't really get that these days. Yeah. Not many people walk into this kind of thing and get TKO victories at all these days, even.
Yeah. Yeah, no, and obviously now Lex Luger pins Mr. Perfect. just under 11 minutes with a backslide. Although Perfect was in the ropes at the time, that you'll notice at the end